Hey, all you cats and kittens. Hope you guys are actually doing some homework and stuff these last couple of weeks rather than watching Tiger King and Netflix all the time. I just wanted to get back on here with you guys and go through some of the next section. This week we are going to kind of go back and review some things that you should probably already know. These are all formulas for area that you should have learned probably in junior high, but maybe have forgotten, and we're going to need to use them for next week's stuff. So I wanted to spend some time to show you the formulas for the areas again, show you some examples. You guys, again, just like you always do, you work some out on your own, and then there's a demonstration of mastery that needs to be turned in by Friday. So we have just some important area formulas that you should know. First one is the area of a triangle. Okay, so if we have a triangle, we'll just draw one in here. Okay, our formula for area is 1/2 the base times the height. And the base and the height are perpendicular to each other. So usually with a triangle, you'll see something like this that is perpendicular to a side. Okay, that is perpendicular, that's going to be the height. And the side that it is perpendicular to is going to be your base. And if it makes more sense when you're putting it into your calculator, if you wanted to do 0.5 times the base times the height, that's the same thing. You could also do that it is the base times the height and then divide the whole thing by 2. All of those are equivalent, just a matter of how you want to actually put it into your calculator. A square, rectangle, parallelogram all have the same formula. That is the area equals base times height. And any of those shapes that we have, our base and our height are always perpendicular to each other. So let's say that's a square. Here we have a rectangle, and pretend like I actually can draw one. And then a parallelogram will look kind of like that. Okay? And again, the base and the height are always going to be perpendicular. So with a rectangle and a square, we always think of like the length and the width basically as the base and the height. And then with a parallelogram, the base is going to be the part, usually we think about it on the bottom, but it doesn't have to be. And the height is going to be perpendicular to the base, just like with that triangle. Okay, our height is not the slanted part. Okay, the area of a trapezoid, this is one that you've probably done but can't usually remember it very well because there's a lot of things going on. So remember, first of all, a trapezoid looks kind of like this, where you have two sides that are parallel and then the other two sides are not. Okay, and so our formula is going to be 1/2 the height, and again, the height, just like on the other things, is perpendicular to the base. So there's going to be our height times the sum of our bases, B1 plus B2. And our bases are always the parallel sides. So in this case, this would be B1 and this would be B2. Our bases are the parallel sides. Okay, and circle we did last week. Remember, we have a circle. We have a radius, and the area, it's a radius, and the area of the circle is just pi r squared. Okay, so this right here you probably might need to come back to, especially when you're doing your homework or your demonstration of mastery. This is going to be the formulas that you're going to need to remember and to know. So let's start with a triangle. Okay, if you notice these two triangles, one of them has the height, that perpendicular, on the inside of the triangle, one of them has it on the outside. So if we look at this first one, we always start with our formula, 1/2 base times the height. It's 1/2. Our base is that whole bottom side, which is 8, and the height is perpendicular to it, which is 4.5. And you're just going to be doing some calculator work with this, and we should get that the area, if you have 1/2 times 8 times 4.5, should be 18 miles squared. Since it's area, our label is always units squared. Then we have a triangle, and if you notice, the height here is on the outside of the triangle, which is just fine. I kind of covered up my numbers there a little bit. which is just fine. So if we have our formula, again, is 1/2 the base times the height, and our base is 5, and our height is 1.9. So we'd have our area is 1/2 times 5 times 1.9. Take a minute, put that into the calculator, and you should get 4.75 kilometers squared. Okay, so now we have parallelograms. Remember, the area of a parallelogram is just the base times the height. And again, just like a triangle, you can have the height on the outside of a parallelogram. So our area is just the base times the height. So we'd have 4 times 1.5, which is 6 yards squared. Okay, this one has some extra information on it, so we need to figure out which pieces of information we need. So our formula is still base times height. Okay, our base and our height are always perpendicular to each other. So if you're looking at your picture, this and this are the two sides that are perpendicular to each other. Those are the only numbers that you need. So you're going to have the area is the base, which is 6, times the height, which is 5. The rest of this information you do not need. Okay, so our area is just 30 meters squared. Okay, moving on, that was parallelograms. Now we're going to look at trapezoids. Okay, and again, the trapezoid's height is always perpendicular to the bases, and the bases are parallel. So if we look, let's pick a color here. What I have in blue are our bases. They are parallel to each other. So here we would have B1 and B2, and then perpendicular to that is going to be our height. Okay, so let's remember our formula. Area equals 1/2 the height times the sum of our bases. So we're going to add our bases together. And then we just substitute our numbers in that we know. We have 1/2 times our height, which was 5.4, and our bases are 1.8 and 7. Remember, order of operations, we do inside the parentheses first. So I'm just going to rewrite some of this because we need to add what's inside the parentheses first, and we'd have 1.8 plus 7 is 8.8. Now we can multiply those all together, and we get 23.76 kilometers squared. Okay, over here, if you notice, there is some extra information. If you want to pause the video and think about it for a minute before I start to see which pieces of information you need and which you don't, that's fine. So I'm going to tell you that our height, remember, is always perpendicular to our bases. So here's our height, which is 6.5, and then our bases are the two sides that are parallel. So there's a base, and there's a base. So if we use our formula, 1/2 the height times the sum of the bases, we get 1/2. Our height is 6.5, and our bases are 18.9 plus 5.3. And that 7.2 is not needed, so we aren't going to use that. So when you do inside the parentheses first, and then you multiply, you should get 78.65 centimeters squared. I don't have any more on there. Okay, now this is just a quick review from last week. If you remember how to do circles, great. Remember, area is just pi r squared. So we always have to have the radius, not the diameter, so make sure that you're using the radius. And our area is going to be pi. In this case, it's 14 is our radius, so we'd have 14 squared. And remember, we always do exponents before we multiply, so we do 14 squared, and then take that times pi, and we should get, I believe, 615.75 inches squared. Okay, and then the last one, this is just an example of it, gives you the diameter instead of the radius. So you always want to make sure you find the radius first. So we're going to take what's half of 30.2. So our radius is 15.1. And our area is pi r squared. So we'd have 15.1 squared. We square that first and then multiply it times pi. And we should get 716.31 centimeters squared. Okay, so you will find in Schoology a couple things. There's going to be a practice worksheet for you to go through with some problems, just practicing how to do these. And then there is a demonstration of mastery that you also need to do that has 5 questions that you've done, just similar to what you've done before. So go ahead and get those done, and good luck. And of course, if you ever have any questions, you can come to my Zoom sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. And you can always stop in to my Zoom session just to say hi if you want to too. So look forward to seeing you guys someday. Bye.